Louisiana has been through so much with all these natural disasters over the last 2 years. I want to first look at Southwest Louisiana. Lake Charles has had some incredible recovery after Laura, but there's still a lot of population loss evident, especially in our schools. So what's really kind of being done to bring people back to that area to help flourish their economy?
Yeah. Well, first of all, that was an understatement. We have had 5 hurricanes in the last 2 seasons, all during the pandemic, with Southwest Louisiana being battered back-to-back by Laura and Delta in 2020. It has had a tremendous impact on that area. And you mentioned population loss. We knew that would happen immediately because people evacuate and then they go back. But because of COVID and so forth, we really don't know exactly what those numbers are. But what we are doing is we are trying to rebuild Southwest Louisiana, Southeast Louisiana after the storms as best we can to make it more resilient, adding to mitigation efforts to reduce the likelihood of flooding. We're doing what we can to rebuild that community as quickly as possible. It's taken way too long. Congress didn't appropriate the money until the end of 2021 for 2020 storms. And look, these are good, resilient people. They are determined to stay in Louisiana, to stay along the coast. We have to do our share.
Both Southwest and Southeast Louisiana have had issues with policyholders not exactly feeling that they're being treated well by their insurance companies. There was a lot of legislation brought up this year to deal with that. How do we kind of combat the issue of people maybe not feeling they're getting the full payout that they need, but also still, keeping our insurance companies here in Louisiana?
I was very disappointed that the legislature didn't pass more bills that were designed to make sure that homeowners, these people who are paying these premiums every single month for years, get the value of what they're paying for. And quite frankly, too many of them didn't do it. They delayed for too long. They put too many adjusters on the case. They minimized, they delayed, you name it. And so we want insurance companies to be in Louisiana. It's critically important. But it's important because they offer a insurance and that is designed to meet certain needs that are being paid for. And if you ask them then after a disaster to do what they're contractually obligated to do, and they say, well, if you do that, we may not be able to stay, then that doesn't work either. So what we have to do, I think, as a state is a better job, is making sure that insurance companies, when they are in the marketplace in Louisiana, that we know that they are properly capitalized, that we know that they are securing reinsurance to the degree necessary.
And along the same lines, Louisiana is one of the states that benefits the most from FEMA and its aid after disasters. How do we kind of keep this good relationship with FEMA, but also maybe kind of push them and say, hey, our people are hurting. How do we speed this up?
Right. We have a very extensive history of working with FEMA and with HUD, the federal government. After Hurricane Ida, we were able to get FEMA to approve for the first time ever in the history of that agency to allow Louisiana to, as a state, to run a non-congregant sheltering program that I think today has right at 6,000 families, concurrently with an effort that was run by FEMA that has only 3,000. But I mean, together, there's between 9,000 and 10,000 families over time that have benefited from that. But we were able to do that faster, and FEMA acknowledges that. And now they're looking to make that part of their normal program.
And after Hurricane Ida, there was communication problems. AT&T was down immediately after the storm. First responders couldn't communicate. So while Terrebonne and Lafourche parishes were essentially closed off, there was a lot of miscommunication going on. What's kind of the biggest things that we learned from that situation after Ida, and what's been done to kind of remedy that for the future?
Yeah, well, and look, there were communication problems, particularly with cell phones. It was particularly challenging because we had invested in FirstNet through AT&T, and they had, this was the first time that system was challenged in a robust way, and quite frankly, it didn't perform as well as it should have. What I can tell you is I've met with all sorts of people from AT&T starting about 2 days after Hurricane Ida hit, and up to today, they have made tremendous investments in additional redundancy and making sure that they have a more resilient system.
And I want to talk about coastal protections and coastal restoration. CPRA has already done a lot to restore marshes and the barrier islands, and Hurricane Ida really fed off of these marshes that had receded. So And you're a big advocate for bringing awareness to climate change. And so do you believe that Louisiana could stay ahead of these changes and keep these barrier islands and everything there as our first line of defense?
Yeah. First of all, we have to build marsh. If you don't have the marsh, then you just have open water. And that storm comes unabated much closer to the population centers. And the good news is we have a very robust program. It is financed better than it's ever been, $1.3 billion in the current fiscal year from the state to pursue about 140 projects. We've never had this much work in progress at any one time. Another $2.7 billion from the Corps of Engineers, by the way. So unprecedented investments. The projects that we had already completed held up very well. We had some problems with the ones that were under construction, and we had to go back and redo some work there. But we're very confident that the protection that we are adding through these investments is helping. Now, we had a few backwater levees that overtopped, but not a single levee failed, and that's the difference. Now, Ida was a horrible storm. And the wind damage was absolutely catastrophic. But the water damage was minimal because all of these investments paid off.
And lastly, Governor, you still have a lot of work to do, but you're nearing towards the end of your administration. Yeah. The way that these storms were handled is going to be a major part of your legacy. Yeah. So just looking back, what's kind of the biggest things you learned and, the things you're most proud of, and what would you pass on to the next person to take your spot? Well,
first of all, we do after-action reviews and after every storm, after every disaster, and they are good, hard, critical looks at what we could have done better. The communication, the preparation is always going to be key, and making sure that you are as responsive as you can be. And quite frankly, it is very difficult to be as fast as people want you to be when you're responding to help them in disasters. And while I feel like overall we've done a very good job of responding, the nature of the challenge has changed, and it's changed in a way that makes it more challenging, not less. Not just the severity. I want to remind people the two strongest storms, the two strongest hurricanes to ever hit our state, one of them came in 2020, the other in 2021. And so I hope people believe climate change is real. I think these events are going to continue to be more frequent and more severe, which is why we have to do more to be ready. But it's also true that these storms first appeared in the Caribbean as just waves, and you couldn't forecast where they were going to go, how strong they were going to be. And so they're at your doorstep by the time the National Weather Center and the Hurricanes Center tells you that's going to be a Category 3, that's going to be a Category 4. And so people have to be, not just government, people, homeowners, families, businesses, whatever. They have to be more ready than ever before. Certainly we do. And that collaboration with the federal government and pre-positioning, I think, is going to be critically important. But I hope the people of Louisiana understand that through GOSEP, our National Guard, all of our local partners, the parish presidents, the folks at the Offices of Emergency Preparedness in every parish, we have a very able group of individuals who are public servants, and they're well experienced now.
Well, Governor, I really appreciate your time and your insight on all of this.
Thank you so much.